a very special opening to podcast number 10. We have Nat on camera.
On camera, y'all.
Our lovely producer does all the hard work behind the scenes so that we can talk into these mics.
Hello.
Yeah, man. Episode 10. And little do y'all know, this probably took us three weeks, maybe 4 weeks, it felt like, to get this one on the schedule. Just people having stuff, things popping up, conflicting schedules, but we are here. Episode 10. We've made it. Nick, I want to thank you personally. I mean this literally from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for putting this together. And feeling comfortable enough to bring me in and ask me to join you on this. I think for me mentally, this is giving me just an outlet, just to talk and get some things off my mind. So I appreciate you a ton. Nat, I appreciate you more than you know. Auntie Nat, I'm sorry, I got to give you your correct title. Auntie Nat, thank you for all that you do, again, behind the scenes, being here, and just giving us your time. You could probably be doing better things than spending your time, spending an hour and a half, 2 hours hanging out on the computer with us. But we appreciate it. I really appreciate it. And this one feels real special. So I'm happy to finally, for us to get to number 10. This is big, y'all. This is big. So.
Yeah, it's a nice milestone. Not only as a number, but we said that we were going to backlog 10 before we started releasing anything. So as soon as we get 11 done, one will go up. So this is our full backstop, which is very exciting for us.
Right.
For those who we're not tracking, which is probably most people. But yeah, Nat, we are forever in debt for what you do behind the scenes. I don't know why you like us so much that you would do that, but we're very appreciative of it.
Right.
I mean, you guys are okay. I mean, yeah, you know.
I can deal with that. I can deal with just being okay. I'm actually cool with that.
We had a couple laughs back in the day.
No, you're great. It's been really fun. I have enjoyed it. Definitely hope to see this keep growing. But yeah, it's been fun doing this. So
yeah. So we made Nat stay on for this, y'all. We cannot leave her out of this introduction. So Nat, I know you're probably dying right now to get off the screen.
I'm count me out. No.
So, Nat, you are good to bounce. We're gonna kick this episode off. Thank you for walking with us.
All right.
Oh man.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think this is a good outlet just to talk about things that are on our mind. We get full liberty in picking where we go with these topics. With the guest, obviously, we want to talk about things that are important to them, but it's always fruitful discussion and always keeps us thinking, which most people probably don't have time set aside in the week for, and it's a nice exercise and it brains and muscle, right?
Yep.
But topic today is an interesting one. Ironically, Nat going behind the scenes, not making an appearance till episode 10, she does a good bit of listening, which is our topic. I think there is an art to listening, and I think everyone that we kind of have worked with so far, especially Mike, are very good at it. What I wanted to open it with was the sentiment or quote that we sometimes hear that goes something along the lines of, the smartest person is often the last in the room to speak. Do you buy into that?
Hey. Initially thinking about that, I would have to say no. Not the last person, but they definitely, in my opinion, are methodical about when they choose to speak and when they think the time is appropriate to interject. The first couple people who speak up are probably the bold people, and those who aren't afraid to ask questions and open up the conversation, kind of break those floodgates. but the person or the people who probably have the most knowledge on a subject, or even if we take it further, maybe the highest IQ, I think they tend to come in a bit later on after they have puzzle pieced together the information that is relevant to the conversation. And then from there, they make like an educated, bold, hard-hitting statement, or ask a really, really good question that makes everybody's mind just kind of flip or turn a different way. I think the conversation tends to be like a bit generic. You get the questions that everybody wants to know up front that maybe you're afraid to ask, besides those bold people who ask first questions. But then when that intelligent person, after they've listened and they are like, all right, this is my time, I think those are the real intelligent people.
I completely agree. I think that the saying blows it a little bit out of proportion, or the proposition I gave.
Just a little bit.
It's not always, and it's not last. For instance, there's plenty of smart people who might, in a meeting after a little bit of silence, speak up so that we can get the ball moving, right? Especially with some social intelligence or awareness.
Yeah.
But I do think it is timed. Methodically is a great way to put it. I think when you're more concerned about what you have to say than what others have to say, generally speaking, the intelligence might be a little bit lower. And so, like you mentioned, there's a time and a place in the people who really have important and meaningful and things that just resonate with the rest of the room. Generally time it pretty well too. I had an article, not really an article, but a rundown. I haven't really seen this a ton, but it was something called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And I'll put a link in the chat real quick for you, but it was interesting. It's a little graph, and the graph explains that they found the study, and the people with the most confidence were, to a degree, lesser on the scale of competence. And then it dips down like a U before it starts to build back up. And I thought that was really interesting, especially when we talk about listening, because if you're confident, you tend to talk. And that brings us to the opposite idea, which is that sometimes those that are the first to speak maybe like to hear themselves talk, maybe don't have as much going on. That's not the point, though. The point isn't, hey, go be the smartest or anything like that. The point was that the effect was interesting to me, that the middle is a U, because I think there's a learning curve there. And I think that is what I would call the art of listening. I think the better you can get at listening to the people around you, the more it benefits them, the more it benefits you, and the more it benefits that middle ground, that relationship between the two of you and that connection.
I would agree.
But I do want to make that clear. Like, we're not saying go be the smartest or make fun of people if they're not the smartest. That's whatever. It's not really important to me. I don't have a great comment on that. But I do think the premise that we'll be running with on this is that studies show some different things that come from listening, such as greater connection, taking perspectives, acknowledging perspectives, and being non-judgmental, curious in others, I guess is another way to view it, tend to be better off when we talk about wellness, and the relationships are stronger. And I think that's fascinating, especially coming from the retail industry where we were both at.
Right.
It's a lot easier to sell stuff when you have a two-way communication street and you can understand what the other person is saying and what they want.
My bad. I'm actually listening. Like, I'm listening and I'm reading at the same time. I was checking out that article and I kind of got lost on it. Because I hit a spot in this article. And I found this point or question really interesting. Why are the least competent people usually the most confident ones? And it says the least skilled person often overestimates their ability because they have no idea how much they don't know. In other words, poor performers believe they know everything in a particular subject, and therefore they tend to be overconfident about it. And then Confucius, they quote him, real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance. And then they go on to say, on the other hand, high performers are fully aware of the vastness and complexity of the field they're working in. They know how much they don't know, and thus they usually underestimate their ability and competence in a particular area. In contrast to high performers, poor performers also do not learn from feedback, suggesting they need to improve. Again, this is because they already believe they know everything. So, like as you were saying that, and I was listening and reading, like I think there were two things that kind of hit. You talked about, the dialogue and having a two-way street here of communication when it comes to, in our case, selling shoes. That is it. That's very, very important and very, very true, because when you break it down, customer, us who are selling shoes, we don't know what they need and they don't know what options are available to them. Mm-hmm. So at that point, like to make that mesh together and fit well together, there has to be a certain level of listening that both parties have to do, because we can't make a proper suggestion for them without them communicating what it is that they need, and they can't, or they run the risk of not getting the proper shoe for them if they aren't listening to our recommendations. I don't want to, just in case we run the risk of having one of the brands come after us for what's the technical term if you're bashing a brand or you're bashing somebody,
like slander or malicious
slander, what is it called? Defamation of character. There we go. If so, I'm not going to name any brands, but I think you could probably get the drift of where I'm going. And we saw the big influx of everybody wanting a particular shoe, and they would come in and say, "Hey, I just want this right here," because it was hot, it was super popular. That's what everybody else was getting. We saw it for Christmas gift, birthdays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and everybody loved that shoe. We also at that point saw a very large return ratio on those same shoes because they didn't feel well, they didn't fit well, and they weren't for everybody. So when you talk about that two-way street, and again, going back to the little article that you dropped, the link that you dropped in the chat, I just found that kind of interesting. Like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And I think you bring up good points. One, I want to continue with the idea that you mentioned, which is for us selling shoes, I've got knowledge on the shoes. You've got knowledge on what you want to use the shoes for, or there's something that you want, a general idea that you have, and we're trying to piece together that theory into an actual shoe.
Right.
I think that's how a lot of conversations in a lot of workplaces go. I know for me, I know a lot of random things within psychology. And there's people who want the teams that they're on to perform better, to work together better. And so we find a way to meet in the middle and make everyone a little bit better. That's why my thing lately has been being a catalyst for better. That's what I want to do. I want to try to understand what it is that you're looking for and help get you there, because I think I have the tools, but I just have a bunch of tools. So I need something to work on. So here's a project. Here's something that we both want to improve. We know the outcome we want to reach. Let's do it together.
Yep.
And a big piece of that is listening, and a big piece of all of our lives is listening. We're going to have conversations every day. It's a silly thing, but how can we make the most of them, right?
Right.
It's one of those that how often do we do it and never reflect on it? So I'm excited to get into that a little bit more. But emphasize again, like Mike said, it is a two-way street. I could do it by myself or do my best to do it by myself. You could do it by yourself. We could do the best to do that. But together, it'd probably be a little bit easier. And lastly, from what you had just mentioned, you sparked an idea in my head, which was, so you in life have places that you want to get, you have places that you want to be. As the sales rep, if you will, my goal is to get you there via whatever the product is. In this case, if you've got goals and directions, Mike and I, through the podcast, want to provide tools and applications that can help you get wherever it is you're going, just optimize your life a little bit, provide a little bit more wellness. For that to happen, we need change, usually refer to it as growth or development. To grow or to develop acknowledges that there is more out there than where we're currently at. And that's the same thing to me as listening. The quote, I think it was from Confucius that you had up.
Yeah, I got it right here.
Yeah. It kind of goes in line with the idea of not as much do they speak, but is the smartest person in the room satisfied with where they're at? Do they think they're the smartest? What is their perception of that? Because I think it was a respect for the vast unknown of whatever field they're in or something like that in the quote. What was it?
So the quote itself says, real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance. So breaking that down is, you know what you know, but you also understand there's more to know, and that you have a current limit that you need to push through to, if you have this much knowledge, but there's this much to learn, you understand that this is where you're at, and you have to close this gap down here. So understanding where you're ignorant in and how you can gain that knowledge.
Yeah. Like the respect of, we were just chatting it up on football. I'm a wide receiver and I know a couple things. I know what a couple routes are and I know a couple techniques. That's awesome and that's great. And be proud in that.
Right.
But understand how much room there is to grow and how much more of a ceiling there is. How many times do you see a young prodigy, not just in sports, but even in the workplace, a young salesman or anything like that, who's very good at what they do, but what do they want to do? They want to go and talk to the people who are the best at it because they want to continue to get better and better and better and better.
Right.
Kind of interesting how the listening role plays there versus the people at work who love to talk. And sometimes you're just scratching your head at, where are they going with this?
I don't even want to call it a theory. It's not a theory, but I have a very strong opinion on this. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody has those at work. It doesn't matter what type of work you do, what region of the world or country that you're in. Everybody has those people who at work just love to talk. And I think that is a couple things. One, they're telling you without telling you. They have a desire for more community. Whether it's because they weren't like listened to at home. And I think of being the youngest child. Like my brother, I'm the oldest of four. My youngest brother, out of nowhere, off the cuff, will just go, talk about like whatever comes to his mind first thing. And I appreciate that he wants to share with me, but sometimes I'm like, whoa, can I get a little more backstory to what's going on? Like, where did this come from? And I think it part of it for him is because being the youngest, maybe he felt like he wasn't heard enough. And so now it's his opportunity to speak up. Even like when we get into some deeper conversations, some arguments, whatever the case may be, he feels the need to try to like speak over whoever it is he's talking to. And again, I think that kind of goes back to he wasn't heard. So I think part of it is like community. You may not feel as if you're heard all the time, or the times that you were having a conversation with somebody, your point of view was not received. So it's not that you were saying anything wrong. It's just the other person was unable to understand where you were coming from. And so you feel like you weren't explaining yourself well. So now you have to over explain situation. You continue to just repeat the same words, not repeat the same words, repeat the same concept, just with different words. And then thirdly, maybe that's how they were recognized growing up. Like maybe that's what it was that gave them that sense of fulfillment where, hey, I get to over communicate. This is my time that I get the spotlight. Like people are acknowledging me. They hear me. I feel recognized. I think that's part of it. And there are probably so many other things that go into that, but immediately, like that's what I think of when it comes to some of those things. Because I can say for me being the oldest, I never necessarily felt like I had to talk all the time. Like, because just being oldest, like I felt heard. I didn't have to do much to feel heard. For me, it was, okay, hey, Mike's in charge. This is what's going to happen. And that was point blank period what it was. So I didn't necessarily have it. And now I recognize that kind of later on in my life, whether it's in friend groups, at work, where I let other people speak first. And I like to sit back and hear other opinions before I decide to speak up. So I think there are many dynamics that play into that.
No, I completely agree with all those. While you were talking, I was like, what do I think goes into that as well? And I wrote down some of the same things. So if your point isn't heard, you want that to be clarified. You want that communication to be clear, especially if that's somebody that you value.
Right.
Regardless of if they value you or not, right? I could sit here and say, oh yeah, people at work, and I'm on my high horse for saying that 100%, which has its own issues. But if I'm on my high horse and that person values me, regardless of if I value them or not, that could be a reason.
Right.
And it's not my place to really sit there and shut that down either. Yeah. So as much as I may joke about it, it's worth listening and furthering your understanding to know what's causing that if it's something that you don't like, right?
Yep.
It could also be that person's comfortable with you, right? Not only do they like you, maybe they trust you, maybe they're comfortable with you, maybe they're more comfortable with you than other people.
Right.
So you mentioned childhood. There's an expression that gets tossed around a lot as a joke, like, hey, growing up, they were told their opinion mattered way too much, right? I get it. I get why people say it, but that could be the reality, and that's not a fault of them. The intent's not poor. That's just a habit. That's something that comes natural to them. And if you're going to sit there without investigating further, are you doing the best that you can? I would argue, I think we could be a better listener there. And then even, you never know what you don't know, right? We talked about on one of the episodes, positivity just being contagious. And I don't know what that person's going through. I don't know what they got going on. So do you smile at the stranger, especially as a runner? Do you smile at the strangers that you walk by? I always do. Why not, man? What does it matter to me? Am I waving and saying hello every time? No, I'm an awkward individual, but I smile. And that could make the difference. And similarly, if there are things going on that you don't know about, not only is that positivity helpful, but that connection and fostering it, even if it's something small to you, it may not be small for them. Maybe somebody's got some real rough stuff going on at home and this is their outlet. And again, to you, maybe this is low on your totem pole of social support, but maybe it's high up for them. So I think that desire of community kind of fits in there as well. What is the desire of the community? Is this long, short term? There's a lot of questions, but it definitely overlaps a little in my head.
I want to touch on something real fast. And it's related but unrelated.
Okay.
You talked about. Hang on, I want to make sure. So you said there's pretty much a gap where somebody wants to feel heard, and that's high on their totem pole.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's high on their totem pole, and it's not necessarily as high for you to, we'll say, hear them or listen to them, like, this is your ceiling, and she wants to be heard right now, okay? She needs some attention, all right, Nick? Make sure you're listening. it's high on their totem pole. It's low on your totem pole. I heard it was maybe, it had to be like a TikTok or something like that, where it was talking about when you get married and when you have a significant other and you live with your significant other, if you two were talking about cleanliness here. So this is your threshold of cleanliness. Like, all right, when it gets to this level right here, things need to be cleaned. But your significant other, it might be right here. And they're like, well, how do you live in this filth of it being right here? And you're like, well, it's not that dirty yet. But they're down here like, oh no, it should have been cleaned a long time ago. This in-between space is where y'all are driving each other crazy because you don't think it's dirty and they don't think it's clean. So you have this kind of this paradigm of what do we do? So I think the same thing applies to that conversation rule where, okay, it's high on their totem pole for them to be heard, but it's a little bit lower on yours. Like, hey, like, I appreciate you. You're good, but I don't know if I necessarily need to hear this information. So now there's this middle ground of, all right, how do we meet in the middle here? Or how do you not drive me crazy by over talking? And how do I not make you feel unsupported or listened to, or those same feelings that you maybe felt in the past of, here's another person that's not listening to me. So like, there's another gray area there too.
Mm-hmm. And based on whatever our experiences are, what is your patience level at each of those zones, right?
Yeah, 1000%.
This is where I'd even propose the art of listening, not only listening, but creating conversation, seeking understanding is a big part of this to me too. You don't have to carry the conversation, but there are going to be questions and things that you can do to raise your level of understanding, which I'm throwing under the umbrella of listening.
Yep.
Maybe I should change the term that I'm calling, but it's whatever. But I completely agree. I have a coworker who is frustrated with how, I guess, not clean, dirty the office has been recently.
Not clean, dirty the office. Just help me understand.
Not clean, but dirty.
Oh, okay, not clean.
Like not clean. So I have a coworker who thinks that the office has been a little bit dirtier than she would like it as of recently. And it's really been weighing on her. It's been stressing her out. This is somebody that I work with a lot. I'm talking with this person every single day. I looked at her. What's dirty? It occurred to me exactly what you're saying. To me, in my perception, I thought the office looked great. I was like, we need to assign cleaning tasks? What are you talking about? Everything looks great. Am I the issue? But it's the lack of that conversation and the lack of the understanding and the lack of talking about what you have too. Because don't get me wrong, it's not all on the listener. There is some on the sharer as well. But and the lack of communication there. It's like, wait a second. And now we have cleaning lists and they really relieve her stress. And I'm glad that they do. I'm glad that I have the understanding. But I guess for months, myself and plenty others in the office had no idea what was going on.
Y'all were existing in your reality of, hey, this doesn't need to be cleaned yet. Like, we're good. But she was like, nah, this is getting filthy. So I understand it. Especially
when, if I clean up after myself, maybe that's what I was raised with. Maybe that's the extent of what I do. So as long as I'm doing me, well, we're good.
Turns out, no, like I did what I had to do. Yeah.
So I think that's very, very relatable. I want to flip a little bit here. So I mentioned talking about understanding, seeking that understanding, and it is a conversation. Listening can't exist without the conversation as well. And I think to be a good listener, you also have to know the right questions and buttons to push along the way there.
Yeah, absolutely.
My first day at Fleet Feet, I think we've gone back to this a couple times, but at least you and I, maybe not on podcast, but I came in, you asked me what I did. I told you I was studying sports psychology. I was super interested. You were like, okay, cool. What about that is interesting to you? How do you learn best? We had a little conversation on stylistically how I operate. Yeah. And generally, what direction do you see yourself going? Things along those lines.
For the record, I have no, and I think I said this before, I have no recollection of that conversation. I don't. So like, I really wish I did. I kind of remember asking like, what's your learning style? But the rest of it blacked out.
Yeah. And I think it is just natural to you, which is why I think this topic is a good one to talk about. But it was very natural for you to ask questions that gave you information on how I go about life and what gets me going, and to gain depth and understanding once you found something that, you know, whether it's you don't have enough information on, you just want to see where I'm at, but asking questions and continuing to pull that out. I think the art of sales is a lot of that too. I know with Fleet Feet, there's a very specific set of questions that we would instruct people to go with to start the conversation.
Yeah.
On that day, I mean, we went back and forth a bunch on sports psychology, and you were, I don't believe in that. Try to sell me on it real quick, you know, asking great questions to get the conversation going.
Yeah.
Similar to those questions when we sit down with a customer. This is unprepped, so we'll see if you've got an answer on the spot. But how do you start a good conversation?
How do you start a good conversation? So, and I'm gonna backtrack for a second. I think I asked you that question, or I started asking those questions to people because I recognized that at the time, being the manager of the store, that it was important for me to feel like our team was going to be on one page, and I wanted to figure out how I could serve y'all and help y'all out the best to be successful. Like I don't think anybody ever says, I want to fail today. I don't want to be good. Like you may come in like, I don't have it all today. I don't think anybody ever says I want to fail today. So I wanted to make sure that I was doing what I could to put you all in the best position to have some success, make some money, whatever the case, whatever it was for y'all. On top of that, I don't think I was ever asked those questions, or no, I think I could confidently say I don't think I was ever asked those questions up to that point, or maybe even a bit past that point. I think maybe reading, listening, hearing other people talk, have conversations, spark that in me like, man, that's a really good question to ask. Like, how do you learn? Because I could be trying to teach you something and you're like, this is going over my head. Like, you're not delivering this message in a way that I am able to best receive it. Yep. So I don't think I was ever asked that personally. And again, not that I didn't feel heard, but I had to flip my mind to try to better understand the message that was being delivered to me, the content, whatever it was, where on the inverse, if somebody had asked me that question or made an effort to change a little bit of their delivery method, I may have picked it up faster. They may have learned how to deliver a message differently, and a bunch of other details that go into that. But to answer your question, how do you start a good conversation? It's gonna sound super simple and cheesy, but a smile, and hey, how you doing today? Like I was literally standing at Chick-fil-A, free promo. Hey, Chick-fil-A, sponsor us, all right? We need some love. Eat more chicken, y'all, okay? But I was standing at Chick-fil-A the other day. Yesterday. And there was I got an order to go, and there was a lady who was walking out with her mother. I was kind of standing by the door, like just the spacing of the store. I just happened to be positioned myself where I thought was the most space, kind of by the door, not blocking it, but just off to the side. Yeah. And as they're walking out, or walking towards me to go out the door, we made eye contact, and I just gave her like a very slight smile, like, hey, like I recognize you. I see you, and I want you to know that I see you. And then as she got closer, I said, like, hey, how you doing today? Or maybe I said, excuse me, or something like that. I hope I'm not in your way. But very, very simply put, just like a smile or a head nod. Hey, how you doing today? I think that to a lot of people goes a long way because they're not asked that frequently. But then when you ask that question, that is now an invitation, and understand that is an invitation for them to possibly unload on you. Like, I'm doing terribly today. It has been the worst day of my life. So just understand, when you ask that question, you have to be willing to be like, all right, here comes whatever comes with this situation. It can be a great situation or a great answer where it's like, I'm having the best day of my life. Today it could not get any better with what's going on. Sunday, I was at church and this guy saw me. And, I had on a little fit. I was kind of stepping a little bit. Like it was just something I was like, I feel like dressing up for church today. So I got dressed and he saw me. And again, it was hey, I recognize you. I see you. And it was an older black guy. So there's the universal, the little black head nod. It wasn't the what's up because he was a little older. So it was a respectful, like you tip your head down. So I saw him. We just kind of tipped my head down to him. And he said, man, you look sharp today. He's like, you look real good. And I was like, I appreciate that. And then he was like, what size shoe do you wear? I was like, 12, 11 and a half, 12, depends on if it's a dress shoe or a couple other things. He was like, I got some shoes. He's like, I have some shoes like I want to give away that I was going to give to you. I was like, hey, I appreciate that, but pass it on to somebody else. Like, I was like, I can't fit them. I don't have a use for them. Pass it on to somebody else. But again, it was that moment of we locked eyes. I see you. I acknowledge you. And it's just hey, how you doing? In a less formal situation, let's say you're out at a bar or at a gym, just kind of hang it out. For me, it's super, super easy to find a small item. And this is, I'm giving y'all a free game. Fellas, take note. And ladies, y'all can probably run with this too. For me, I like to find a very, very small item that I don't think anybody else is going to notice. Mm-hmm. So it'd be like, if her fingernails might have like a blue on them, and she accents that with like a necklace that might have some blue in it. And these are just basic examples, whatever the case may be. And I go, that is a very, very nice color blue. That looks really good on you. It's not super forward. It's not aggressive. It's complimenting. It gives them the opportunity to say, hey, thanks. This is my favorite color. Hey, I got it from my mother. Oh, this is a gift. Or I wear it because you're bringing attention to a detail that gives them the opportunity to respond how they want. If they don't want to enter into that conversation, then they don't have to. They can be like, oh, hey, thanks. I appreciate it. And then you just go on about your day. But if they feel comfortable enough to continue the conversation, then boom, you're in it. Mm-hmm. And at that point, game is rolling. At this point, it's okay. So where you from? How long you been here? I got you. So that's free game, y'all. Use it. Just find a little something, drop a little compliment, like, hey, that looks nice. And the conversation will just naturally flow from there. So
I like that. I think that also disclaimer extends beyond game. Of looking for potential mates or anything like that. Not that Mike intended it to mean that, but just to clarify in case anyone thought that. I like the subtle gesture. I think, especially, I just mentioned it with the running. How many times you're running down the road and you make eye contact with somebody, but it's a little too far, and so you're not waving, you're not really doing any hello or anything there. But when you get closer, then there's the hello, right? And so you can make some form of nonverbal communication from further away. Again, this is just interacting with humans, no specific application there, but yeah, that does kind of break the ice a little bit. And so I like the way that you said that. I also really I wrote down I recognize you. I think that ultimately is what people benefit from. I don't want to say that's what people want, because some people may not want that. Right. And it's definitely situational. Some people want it at church. Some people may want it at the Chick-fil-A. I mean, some people may not want it unless it's from their friend group or in the library and they're studying or something like that. the recognition nonetheless does provide a benefit. There's plenty of research to say that acknowledging, seeking, and taking other people's perspectives, again, drives more wellness.
Yep.
And so whether you were raised that way or not, there's evidence to show that you benefit from feeling recognized and potentially more from recognizing others. And so even if it's just you being selfish, you want to benefit from recognizing some other people, you go ahead and do that. That's totally fine. But I think that's always an interesting point. And it is something that you do really well with, I would say, pretty much everybody. I know that the biggest thing that I picked up on probably a month or so into working with you was, instead of saying, yeah, I got you, or yeah, or like, okay, and you're nodding your head and you're going along with somebody's talking to you, you were the first person that I heard widely use understood with the head nod instead of a yep.
Understood.
Yeah. And to me, anytime I was talking to Mike was like, understood. I was like, oh, he's listening. He gets this. Like, I adopted that. That's another free tip for anybody out there that tends to have a little bit more pack than what everybody says. But I thought, to give an example there, I think you do that really well. And I think he knows what he's talking about with this stuff.
And again, all this just goes back to personal experience and things that I have picked up, whether it's from reading leadership books, listening to other people who podcast, who are motivational speakers. Like most of these are probably not my own tips and tricks that I've come up with. Like, this stuff is very much so common knowledge, but that understood piece, to me, like you said, it acknowledges that I'm listening and I'm comprehending what you're saying. Like, I'm actively dissecting this, and I want you to know that I'm in this conversation with you, because you can easily be like, somebody come, yeah, I got you. Yeah, for sure. You on your phone doing something, like multitasking. But I think that word of understood and the combination of understood with the head nod, like, we're here. Understood. Okay. Got it. Understood. And you don't have to abuse it in the conversation. But in those moments when something really hits home, or you feel like somebody has made a strong point in whatever they're saying, that understood is like, oh, I get that. And I want you to know that I got this, and that we're here together. Yeah.
I think it builds at least the strength of that conversation, if not more.
Yeah.
Don't have any studies on understood. For sure. Don't have any specific studies on that, but I would venture to say that we could run one and get some solid results there.
Yeah.
Another thing that you brought up that I thought was very interesting was, I wrote down the example that I had. I forget exactly what you said, but you were saying kind of like translating what someone's saying, right? So with the learning style, when you have a new employee, you're trying to figure out how they operate so that you can translate into their language, talk in this common language, and get everyone on the same page, get everybody on the team on the same page, and make sure that you're doing your best job as a leader,
right,
to serve those that you're following or that are following you.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. And the analogy that I came up with was, let's say we've got to get dinner together. I can go about this many different ways. There's a bunch of different restaurants. There's a bunch of different stores. I can go to the store and buy groceries and bring it back and make it. Or I can go and pick food up from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Neither one's wrong. They both work. They both serve the goal of get dinner.
Yep.
But some are going to work better for other people.
Correct.
Maybe there's dietary restrictions. Maybe there's a budget that we're following. Maybe you have certain food preferences. If you want to eat like a 5-year-old like I do, then going out and getting a bunch of
chicken nuggets and fries.
Yeah, give me some chicken nuggets and some French fries, maybe some mozzarella sticks, and now we're talking. Pizza as an appetizer, perhaps. We could get this going. For a lot of people, that's not going to work. But again, there's many ways to do it. Maybe ice cream still works for everybody after, not if you're lactose intolerant, and that is what it is. But again, there's a million ways to go about this, and everyone's a little bit different. If you have a food allergy or you don't have a food allergy, then that's going to put limits on this. And I think how you talk to people is similar as well. Some people are really good at connecting the dots and just want the terms thrown out there. Some people need you to connect the dots with them. Some people need you to connect the dots for them.
Yeah.
And so gaining as much insight as you can ties back to that listening and that understanding piece. So similar to you, when starting a conversation, my big thing is I try to show enthusiasm. I don't want to say interest necessarily. I think showing interest at times, the overdoing of it can be creepy. Don't be creepy. That's not great.
Yes, it can be creepy. And I also want to say it almost allows whoever and whatever the topic is for you to become like obligated to be a part of it. When you show over interest, somebody's like, dang, Nick really likes this. Maybe I can rope him into the development of this, the execution of this, whatever that case may be. So yes, I think that's a really, really good point.
And that's not good for either of us. If now I'm roped into things that I don't want to do and you want someone who wants to be there.
Right.
But I do think that there's this idea of enthusiasm works for me. That's at least how I process it. If somebody's got a different definition or a different word that they like, that's okay. Again, that's might be better for you, and that's all right. But respecting the individual as an end in themselves and not a mean to an end, or in other words, being genuine is massive. So if you can have this conversation, well, if you're going to have it, have it. If you don't want to be there, maybe just find a way to say that you don't want to be there. But if you're going to have it, shows genuine enthusiasm in the person and what they have to say, acknowledge their perspective and try to dive a little bit deeper. I know when I meet new people that I'm interested in facilitating a conversation with, for me, I kind of poke around a little bit. It's a little bit of a scattershot method, but I try to find things that they're interested in and get them to tell me about that. Now, sometimes that backfires if they just don't want to have the conversation. They don't want to be carrying it. That's all right. And I try to, go for a little bit, but I usually try to listen first and figure out what people are passionate about. That's a lot of what we do on this podcast. You can get somebody who's passionate about something to start talking. You're along for the ride, and it is probably going to be interesting. That's what they're passionate about. They're a subject matter expert compared to me. And I understand my little dot in the field of knowledge,
I agree. And I think we've touched on this in prior episodes, but the world as it is hard enough. Yeah. Everybody in some capacity, I won't say everybody, but most people are trying their best. I won't say every day, but let's call it like 5 days out of 7. Like, you may not have it every single day, but 5 out of 7 days, most people are trying their best, and they're giving all that they have to. It could be just getting through the day. That could be the win for them. And so with the world being as hard as it is, you showing enthusiasm or excitement about something they're excited about, I think is the bare minimum that we can do. And who are we to kill the dreams of somebody else? I mean, like, it doesn't, you wouldn't kill the dreams of an 8-year-old kid. And if you do, like, shame on you. You deserve whatever karma comes to you. You would not kill the dreams of an 8-year-old kid. So I don't know where the disconnect is, but what makes it okay? And don't get me wrong, there's a very, very big difference between having a real conversation where you are pretty empathetic, or you are trying to understand where the person is coming from. You are giving facts. This is not a very heavy opinionated conversation. There's a difference between that and killing somebody's dreams. You know how kill the dreams of an 8-year-old? Why would you do it to somebody who's 28 or 38 or 48? Like, if they think they have a good idea, say, dang, like, yeah, you know, I see where you're coming from with that. I think that's a pretty good idea. I think you should go on it and tackle that, or at least try to invest into it and take it down. Like, it costs nothing to support, especially verbal support or oral support, whatever. Like, it costs nothing at all to say somebody like, hey, I see where you're coming from with that. That's a good idea. And also, it's okay to be like, I don't know if I understand that idea completely. Like, help walk me through that. That shows in a different way some excitement about the subject, because they see that you're trying to learn versus, yeah, I don't really see where you're going with that, but best of luck to you. It's kind of dismissive, and that's not the route you want to go. It's like, hey, like, I don't necessarily understand where you're coming from, or like where you want to go with this idea. Just help walk me through it so I can understand it a little bit more. That gives them the opportunity to talk through a couple things, and maybe they will understand themselves, like, this is a really good idea, or this might need a little more work. So I think you brought up a good point with that, for sure.
Yeah. And so I love the point, 5 to 7 days. Hopefully people are trying their best out there. I'm going to be a little bit more glass half empty here. 5 out of 7 days. Hopefully you have the intent of trying your best at the bare minimum. I don't know if we hit it every 5 to 7 days. Those are big numbers for me over here, but I have the intent to do it 5 to 7 days.
Right.
But we've been talking loosely about the hows of a conversation, and particularly the side of a listener, and how to kind of keep the fire going with a conversation. I know we didn't specifically say this is what we're doing, but if you haven't caught on, go re-listen, drop a like, subscribe, show some support, maybe a little comment, whatever you want. But we're deep within the how. I think that another piece, whether it's at the beginning, like we started talking about, or throughout, asking good questions really, really, really matters. And I'm going to tie this back into what you had talked about just a second ago too. But really quickly, the fun summary, if you will, how you phrase your questions matters a ton. There's a lot of yes, no questions. There's polling questions. And so a yes, no, hey, did you remember to blah, 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 or, Mike's a Bengals fan. Did the Bengals win this weekend? Unfortunately, they did against my team, but did they win this weekend? And you're going to say yes. And now I have to ask another question to get more out of you, right? Instead of, how did the Bengals game go last weekend? Now you're going to, and I'm here for the story, right? Both can be useful. If you want a quick answer, the dids, the do's, those sorts of questions, those yes, no's, can be effective. If you don't even want a verbal response, you just want a number, you can use your polling or your scale of 1 to 10 real quick. What do you got for me? But a show of hands, how many people have experienced this before, right?
Yep.
But when we talk about depth and connection, it tends to work better when you get away from those. And even which I'll throw in there too. So which of these was the best for you? You have to ask a follow-up of why. Or what about that was the best? Your what, your why, and your how questions tend to lead to a little bit more depth. I would say what questions lead to the most depth, especially when you're talking about things that you don't really understand.
Right.
Why and how questions sometimes can lead to a little bit more defensiveness. But in general, all three of those tend to be pretty good. I think that's important as the listener to understand is, again, your intent might be great. My intent might be to be great 7 days a week.
Yeah.
If I only hit that 3 times, that intent's, it's a start, I guess.
Right. It's a start.
But fine tuning those things, how you ask questions and how you drive more depth, there is an art to that. And I would, again, tie that in with the art of listening. Now, if someone's bringing you good news, this is going to tie in. Mike, you set this up really well. I kind of thought about bringing this in, and then you touched pretty much this idea.
Okay.
There are a couple ways that you can respond when someone brings you good news.
Mm-hmm.
You can sit on your phone and nod and go, yep, that's awesome. Wow. Nice. You know, you're playing your video games, you're watching your game, you're watching your TV show, you're making dinner, someone's telling you a story. Oh, that's okay. I'll just come back. You don't seem too interested. Is kind of the response I would expect if I'm playing video games and not fully bought into what someone's saying. Another way I can respond, again, this is specific when you bring good news. But if someone brings me good news, it's like, oh, dude, the Bengals game was so sweet this weekend. Oh, yeah, that was sweet. Well, let me tell you about Auburn real quick, because they had a good game too. Now I'm connecting the concept to you. But you didn't come to me to talk about the Auburn game.
Right.
You might entertain that conversation and maybe even go back and forth a little bit. But yeah. I just stole that.
Yep.
It was like me first. Now that you mention it, I do have something to tell you. And it's like, no. You brought you good news. Let's try to listen to it. There's an art to that. Keep hammering this home.
To hammer this home even further real quick before we get too far away from it. Have you personally ever tried, and you brought up the playing the game example. I know for all of the gamers out here, and really not even all the gamers, but anybody who is doing another task when somebody wants to share good news. Have you personally ever said or tried, hey, give me 1 second, let me finish this up, and I'll give you my undivided attention. Or, hey, give me 1 second, I want to hear what you're saying. Let me finish this up real quick, and then we can talk about this. Because again, it acknowledges that like you're doing more than just okay, that's cool, got you. I'm gonna give you this attention or this time to explain what you have going on. Just let me finish this first. So I think it kind of forces that person to respect your time and what you have going on. So it makes them acknowledge like, okay, maybe I should have asked like, hey, can I share some good news with you or something like that? Like, do you have a minute for me? Versus just Evel Knievel, you on the motorcycle, jumping right into it. You taking, hey, I got you. I want to listen to you. Just give me a second to finish it up. Have you ever done that?
I have. I'm not the best at it. I won't lie. I always think I can multitask. And the truth is, we're just, as a species, not that great at it. We all think we're really, really good at it.
Huh.
It's evidence to say we're not the best. Some are better than others. That's for sure. But I have tried it. Mixed results. I think it's better, and I think the intent's better, especially from a healthy communication standpoint. Yeah. I do think people can take that the wrong way as well if they don't understand that you are doing something and they're like, oh, I'm always second, you know, or you're like, yeah, I'm not important enough right now. If that's how they respond to it, then we've got other conversations that we need to have, but I can see that being a response at the same time. I think that's much more, I think it's a better way to go about it. I think it's a more authentic and honest way to communicate that, you know, you do have this interest and I want to do that. I need to finish this real quick because, you know, what am I going to quit out of the game? Like, I'm in the middle of it. I can't pause it. It's because other people are online, right? And so if that's my frame of thought, that is a better way of going about it than faking through the conversation.
For sure.
But also to the other person's point, yeah, I could just quit out of it.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, the game, right? The game will be there.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably pause it on. You got YouTube TV these days. There's a little pause button on live TV. It's crazy. So that excuse, unfortunately, not as great. We can come up with a better example, but I do like the point. We're getting somebody in trouble and we're saving somebody else's. But ways that you can respond when people bring you good news. We've got that disinterest, like, sweet. Yeah. Sick. Heads down, locked in. Concentration's clearly somewhere else. Yep. Good intent, you're responding. That's a start. Definitely can be better. Still not super productive. We've got Yeah, the Bengals game probably was sweet, but let me tell you about the game that I watched. Man, this was crazy. So we've got the me first, running away with the conversation, switching the topic to something that I want to talk about based on half of what you said. The next one is one that I think the level of interest and the intent is higher, still misses the mark. And that's coming from a place of concern. When someone has good news, you ever play devil's advocate and you're like trying to, well, did you think of this or this or this or this? Like, so let's say, we'll use an example. I just half committed to the 15K in Jacksonville this spring. I forget what it is, the river run, something like that.
All right.
Not super important. Committed to a 15K in March. I bring my good news to Mike, and Mike responds, and how much have you been running? Aren't you out of shape? Did you think about how cold it's going to be all winter in Tennessee for you coming up from Florida? Are you sure you're going to be able to stay committed to that? You know, these are good points. They're actually great points. Now is not right when I bring the good news.
Like I just committed to this. I can still back out. This is not the time for this, Mike. Please.
No, I mean, if it's actually a time-sensitive matter and it's dangerous, 100%, let me know.
Hey, I got a race in a week, okay?
Mike, I signed up for a 100-mile race in the middle of the woods. Starts at midnight next week. It's in India. Mike's be like, wait a second. Let's just talk.
Let me see the details of this race. Where's the link? I want to read about this more.
Yeah. You're genuinely concerned and you want what's best for me, but expressing those concerns right in the moment is. You ever have a kid come up to you and they're really excited about something? You start poking holes in it. What did you talk about? Don't squash an 8-year-old's dream. Do not squash that 8-year-old's dream, right? When he brings you this good news, especially if it's not time sensitive. It's not going to hurt anyone in the next 10 minutes. That's okay. We'll come back to it. It'll be fine. So that's 3 good ways to
listen. I have four.
What'd you say?
Oh, I think we're hitting a little delay.
That's okay. That's our first internet issues in a minute.
We're lagging a little. Right. In a minute. Okay. So I have four young cousins, and they're all under the age of, I'll say, gotta be 8. Yeah, it's 8 or 9. I think the oldest just turned 9. And every time I see them, they're so excited to see me. Like, I love them. Like, I enjoy seeing them. But they see me, and it's 4 of them, and there's 1 of me. Now, I'll say 2 of them like want to share their entire lives with me. The third one, he kind of does his own thing, and then the youngest, she's a girl. Like, she likes to like play hide and seek a little bit. And so, you know, but the 2 of them, immediately, I maybe didn't see them for, it could be 24 hours. They want to recap the past 24 hours. Everything that has happened within the past 24 hours, they want to tell me it, and they want to tell me it right now. Like, this is the most important thing to them. If they cannot get this out, their world is going to crumble. And it's like, all right, so now I got to receive 24 hours from you and 24 hours from you. I got to sit here and I got to just take this in both ears. And it's just like 2 headphones playing 2 different songs. And I'm listening like, yeah, okay, that's really cool. Wow, how was that? Oh my God. So what are you going to do tomorrow? Like, I'm bouncing back and forth. But yes, man, like, I don't want to squash their dreams at all. And I'm just like, all right, Mike, you just got to take this information. Just be receptive to it for a minute. Give them 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, they'll be done talking to you. They'll be back to playing on their iPads. Like, that is where I have to go. And I don't know where I was going with that, but you said something and it immediately made me think of them in that scenario.
Yeah. No, I think that's perfectly in line, especially with like the different ways that you can respond. You can be concerned. Yeah, your little cousin has a new boyfriend at school. You can also realize that that's just what 6 and 7-year-olds do sometimes. They probably made eye contact once and it's gonna be fine. Right, but you can take it and imagine A little 6, 7-year-old comes up to you. I made a new best friend at school today. And your response is, you have a best friend? Let me tell you about my best friend. I just run away with that conversation, just flip it. That's messed up, man.
That's wrong on so many levels. I've messed with my cousins before. Like, they'll tell me something and I'll like just actually it sounds crazy, like a social experiment for me almost. I'm like, let me just say this just to see how they respond. They don't acknowledge it. Like, you can tell them something, you can be like, oh yeah, I made a best friend. Like, I made a best friend today. You could be like, well, let me tell you about my best friend. And you can say 3 sentences about your best friend, and they'll be like, yeah, but my best friend is da 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 da. And they just literally jump over like what you just said. And
like, yeah, that was disrespectful. I was talking to you.
Like, they don't understand that concept of what just happened. They think that that's a natural conversation. So they just go back. Their brain picks up right where they left off. Like, they don't understand that dialogue piece.
As they should. It was disrespectful.
Right. You're right.
And and then the last one being that concern, like, oh, you got a new best friend. We don't background check the best friend of the 6-year-old that they just make at school. At least not right now. Like, the first time they bring it to you, no, we're going to celebrate them. Just have a new best friend.
Right.
So those are the 3 ways. And it's hilarious when we talk about it with a little cousin coming up to you, how funny it is and how disrespectful it is to respond in those 3 ways. So why are we doing it with adults?
Yeah.
Don't do that. If somebody brings you good news, especially if you care about them, but even more so, or I guess even more so if you care about them, but even in general, if it's a random person that brings you good news, it's still not right to squash their news, to change the topic to you, or to start poking holes in whatever they're excited about. That's not nice. All 3 of those detract from relationships. If you think about it as you got your piggy bank, and you can put into the piggy bank, or you can empty the piggy bank. And running with examples from childhood, you go and spend the entire piggy bank. We had a candy shop outside our neighborhood, and it was just like, how many fun dips can I buy if I save up for 2 weeks, Wonder where I get the sweet tooth from. But I can empty the piggy bank of the relationship that I have with that person by continuously responding in these ways. They're detractors and they take away from it. I'm just withdrawing. The way to deposit, the one way to deposit when people bring you good news, is to help them relive whatever that good news is. So if Mike brings me the news that his football team has won a game this weekend, even if I'm not interested in the news, if I'm interested in Mike, or I just generally care about the positivity that we have said multiple times is contagious, I want to help you relive that. The reason I prefaced with questions a little bit before this was asking good questions that help to let you relive it are going to be those what, why, how. Yeah. Like, no way, they won the game. What was the most exciting part about the game? How did you feel when they were going into the 4th and it was a shootout? Why do you think what led to the success? Why do you think they were so good this weekend? Letting you expand more on that and relive these emotions from that news is therefore going to benefit the conversation. And now I, as the listener, have contributed one question. I might be here for an hour now listening about the Bengals.
You good.
Depends how in depth we are watching and wanting to retell that game. But
if y'all can't tell, Nick is high key, low key hurt. All right, about this Bengals Bills game. All right, he's brought this example up several times. If y'all haven't caught on yet, all right,
it felt relatable. No. I didn't even catch the game. We had a nice date night here, and I checked the score, and I was like, we're losing.
You knew y'all were going to lose. There was no reason to watch. I mean, I get it. I would have done the same thing, but whatever.
The Bengals have had our number for years. Every time I think that they've got it, we don't. Joey Burr just loves cooking buffalo. He's a big fan of buffalo wings is probably what it is.
He must be.
He knows if he ever comes to Buffalo, people are going to respect him, and he's going to get the best wings in town. It makes sense. I respect it.
Right. You got to respect that, man. He does. I agree. Absolutely.
But in general, when people bring you good news, that is an easy way to multiply the relationship and to paint the picture. This is not my story, so I will be pretending it's Mike's story, even though it's not his. Disclaimer. And changing the companies and details and blah, 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 blah. Not important. But let's run with this like this is a story that I'm telling about Mike. And I think this paints the picture really well of what happens over time when you respond like this, because it's not one time that you're looking at your phone or you're playing your game or you're watching something that undermines the relationship and causes these issues and these breakdowns of just depositing until the piggy bank is empty. Over time is when it becomes an issue.
Yeah. I want to add on to that real quick. As we talk about positive reinforcement is a word that we'll use. And like you said, the example of allowing somebody to relive the good news or the happiness that they've experienced. As you're doing that, I think it's important that if you recognize that, that's a good idea. I support you in this. I love that you're choosing to go this route, or that you're choosing to do this. All of those things. Mm-hmm. Before you want to I'll say criticize, for lack of a better word, give that good the good response the good response first, the supportive response, before you begin to probe and ask questions to help them build up. So I think you kind of danced around it for a second, like, hey, I think that's awesome. I love that you're doing that. How to make you feel? What's your goal? Like, where are you going with this? Again, you get that buy-in, you get that investment, you get them talking. And I think you giving a supportive response gives you the autonomy and allows you in that conversation to then maybe be critical. Like, hey, like, okay, that's really awesome. Like, oh, okay, Nick, you took a new job. All right, cool. So why'd you want to move to Nashville? Like, what is it about Nashville that attracted you? Oh, all right. That makes sense. Okay. So like, what are your plans while you're there? Got it. Hey, Nick, I know you're huge in the running. What's your plan for continuing running, continuing training? Did you think about like how cold it might be there? Like, I'm not discouraging you from doing so, but like, hey, did you think about that? When you validate what they're happy about and the changes that are happening in their lives, it gives you that ability to then creep in and ask questions that may challenge some of the things that they stand on, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but it gives you that power to do so. So support, and then, for lack of a better word, criticize. Make sure you give that support first before you decide to criticize.
Yep. And it's interesting you mentioned that too. The research says, that was a weird way of saying research. The research says the best way to go about that is one conversation and then another conversation. So conversation one is reliving that moment. And then conversation two, you revisit with those concerns.
Right.
That way it's not like you're shutting the door before it's open.
I hear you.
Probably the best way to view it or to phrase it. If they can't come to you with their good news, they're not going to come to you with the bad news either. There's no way they can confide. You couldn't do anything with the good news. You were on your phone the whole time. That's no fun there. You shoot every good idea I have down. Ever heard that before? That's not a great thing to hear, right? Like, wait, no, I do not.
Right.
But to your point about asking questions and concern, like, there's an art to asking fair questions too. I think one of the funniest examples and ways I'll phrase this is when you're driving. If you were to get into an accident and you get out of the car and you ask, why are you such a dumbass? That's not a fair question. That's not going to get to the bottom of anything, like that. That's not helping anything. Similarly,
I wasn't to ask me how I was drinking water either. I just wasn't wondering. All right, that was.
But when you ask someone something like that, or when you ask questions with why do you always do this or why do you never do this? The response is going to be, I don't always do that. There was one time that I did the other thing. Right? It's not that I never do that. I did do that once. I washed the dishes once. You don't remember that? I did it. I remember it. It sucked. But now the argument is you missed the point. Like now you're arguing over an always or never. Those absolutes and those non-fair questions tend to lock you into those things.
Yeah.
And so when you do address concern, it's important to be asking fair questions. And you can lead a little, but not in a malicious way, right? Like topic wise, you can lead it, but it shouldn't be what did you think about how it's going to suck, how cold it is? Like, that's not a fair question. What do you think about the weather in the winter? That's a better way to ask that. Is that the best way? I don't know. That's just off the dome, but it's better than why would you sign up for blizzards? No. But if I was moving back home to Syracuse, brutal.
To that point, I think that speaks to the relationship you have.
Yeah,
and I think we can apply this to kind of everything we've talked about.
Yep.
The relationship that you have with people or persons, individual persons, the relationship that you have. Nick and I know our relationship, and then we know our individual relationships that we have with Natalie. We know that threshold or the line that we can cross with each other. Like I may not need to qualify or validate something that Nick has said or brought up. As long as I'm not just coming off top, shooting it down, like ripping it. Nick and I have that relationship where he tells me something. I'm like, okay, sweet. But did you think about X, Y, and Z? I acknowledge it for a quick second, but we have that relationship. And I think we need to be clear when we say validating somebody else in any capacity, relationship, work, however it is a good process to learn because it's beneficial across the spectrum of conversation, but also just know your relationships that you have with people and know or understand where that threshold is. Like sometimes it's not always necessary. Sometimes with my brothers, I don't have to do that all the time. I can jump right into, hey, that's pretty dumb. Like you need to rethink that, and they won't feel any type of way about it because we've been through things. We've loved on each other. I validated them other ways. So y'all hear us and understand this is for those relationships that may not be the strongest yet, that you're still working to build up, and you're still building trust and openness inside of these relationships. Practice it there first, and you'll see that practice become practical and be in your reality of the conversations that you have.
Yeah. And I want to build off that a little bit as well. That what Mike is saying is not you're off the hook in your close relationships for responding properly.
Facts.
You might not need to do it 100% of the time when the level of trust is higher, because the perception the other person has is going to be that your intent is good, and they're going to understand that, kind of interpret it in that method. But in relationships that aren't as strong, one, you're going to see a lot more change. There's a lot more. It's easier to grow off of one conversation because proportionally one conversation isn't as great as the total as if you've had a million conversations with someone. Yep. So one really good conversation going to lead you to want to have a second good conversation versus, one good conversation of a million conversations may move the needle a little bit.
Yep.
What we often find is actually the opposite in research is that the closest relationships that you're in, people do tend to let themselves off the hook. And that's where we run into issues. And so this is a good transition into our story that I'm going to pretend is Mike. But again, disclaimer, is not Mike. It's someone else that... So Mike has been in a 10-year relationship. Love of his life. Been through it. They moved around a couple different times, but they've stayed strong. And it's ready for the next step, but unfortunately right now, Mike is in Dayton, Ohio for work, and his girl is in Richmond, Virginia. They really do want to take the next step, but they're kind of torn on how to go about it because her work is out in Richmond, Mike's is in Dayton, and they both really love what they're doing. They're taking a trip. They've always wanted to go to Alaska, see the sights, go along a cruise, the wonderful, gorgeous landscape of Alaska, which is forever underrated. And I hope to get there one day because everybody that comes back loves it. So I'm sure Mike and his girlfriend will enjoy that. His girlfriend, let's name her Kendall. So Mike and Kendall out in Richmond.
Let's see here.
Her job ran into some issues. The issues with the job are more the company than her. They're not going to be able to continue operating at the size that they're at. So they're offering buyouts to people. The buyout, the terms of it are roughly, we'll pay you 2 years of salary so that you are sufficiently covered to find a new job and that the transition will be easy because we don't want to let you go, but we have to. And this is what the budget is. So we're trying to give a heads up and make sure that we're not stabbing our employees in the back. Kendall is going to mention this to Mike for the first time in the Alaska trip. And the conversation goes something like, they land, they meet in Alaska, they fly in and meet up there. Because obviously that's cheaper flight-wise, I would imagine. But so they meet at the hotel that they're at in Alaska. And Kendall is so excited. She is just bubbling over with excitement, waiting to tell Mike that she can move to Dayton, Ohio. They can finally move in together and spend life together. You know, it's this, I'm coming home from work to the other person. It's great. She's thrilled because this is something that they've both wanted. Mike hears this and goes, well, how are you going to be able to afford that? You just put a down payment on a car out in Richmond and you're leaving your job and you're only going to have 2 years salary. And quite frankly, the job that you were in, you know, it was a great job, but we were kind of lucky to get to that spot. Right. And are you sure you're going to be able to get something that's paying as good? This is a really quick jump. Are you sure that we're going to be able to pull this off? Because I've got these meetings coming up and, you know, your family reunions in a month. When are we going to have the time to move you in?
Right.
There's no question that Mike cares about this individual. But there's so many concerns and they come out automatically that at the end of Mike asking questions, Kendall is now in tears, doesn't want to do the trip in Alaska, and the relationship never gets repaired.
Yikes.
The intent was good. The concern was good, right? We talked about it. The intent is good there. The concern is good. Flipping the conversation to something that you want to talk about that's kind of similar. The intent's still good. This disinterest, the intent's still good. I know looking back in high school, for me, it's my mom. How many times did I ignore what she was saying while I was playing video games? It hits home a little bit. But over time, those sorts of responses take away from the relationship. And given unfortunate timing, it can really, really, really be detrimental. I know when I heard that story, I was really moved by it. I don't know if it goes as well when I paint it as Mike, but hopefully it still paints the picture. How important it is to relive those moments, because when they're not there and people come to you with excitement and then you kind of turn them away, it's not great. Quite frankly, it's bad. It isn't going in a good direction. And so understanding the tool and how to be a good listener, I think is really, really important with that.
How long have you been sitting on that story? I think that's personal experience.
Not mine. but I had a colleague that shared it during a training, and it was sold the point. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah. They do a reflection on, if you were to, for anybody that's listening, I would encourage you to try this, but for the people closest in your life, what percentage of the time when they bring you good news do you respond and help them relive the moment? What percentage of the time do you think you respond with concern? What percent of the time do you switch to something that you're interested in that's adjacent? And what percent of the time do you respond while you're on your phone and it's half-hearted and there's disinterest? And most people do find the ones closest to them are the ones that they always let themselves off the hook, which is backwards.
I've been, because you bring up that point, I think I've been doing my best to make a conscious effort to, when I'm with family and friends, close family and friends, that I'm giving them my best. I think there's this expectation that you show up to work, you show up to school, you show up to a place where somebody has authority or dominion over you.
Yep.
And you give them your best because you're afraid of being fired, you're afraid of being reprimanded, you're afraid of fill in the blank, whatever your case may be. I got to give them my best. I can't settle for anything less, or else X, Y, and Z is going to happen. Keep that same energy with your family and friends, because hopefully they are here for they're here for the long run. That they're going to support you whether you have that job or not, whether you're going to that school, whether you're on that team. Those same things are in place. So you asking the question of what percentage of the time are you doing fill in the blank from what you just asked. Show up for your family and friends. Show up for those people who are close to you, who you have invested this time in for years, or it could be a new friendship for months or weeks. It could be somebody you met yesterday. Show up for them. Give them your best, because that's what they deserve, and you deserve the reciprocated efforts and energy that hopefully they value as well. Like, hopefully you see those same things coming back to you. So I've been making a conscious effort to, when my family or friends are talking, if I can't give them my attention right now, like, hey, let me finish this up. And typically the distraction comes from my phone. Like, I could be doing something, I'll be like, I'm sorry. And I will show it. I click, close it. I'm sorry. Like, what were you saying? Like, I'm here now. And it sounds so baby boomer-ish, just like old person. Put the phone down. Just put it down for a split second. Put it down for a split second. And even put it down, make some eye contact, and give them 30 seconds. If you give somebody 30 to 90 seconds, I promise you can pick the phone back up. Not unless it's like do or die right now. You can pick that back up. Everything else will be the exact same. Where you left it, the message you left, the game, whatever the heck it was, it's probably going to be in the same place. It's going to be in the same space. Like, it is, again, I feel so old saying this. It's probably not that important in that moment. And that relationship that you have, I would bet 9 times out of 10, it's more important to you than what you have going on, like with your phone for entertainment or respond to something, looking at a video, whatever that case may be. Yeah.
I think you bring up a great point. Like, give your best to those people that matter, because the mindset is often that, well, this is my time off. This is my me time. I just want to relax. I just want to play this game. I had a really long day at work. When I say let yourself off the hook, these are the things going through your head justifying why you just didn't look out from your phone.
Yeah.
How many times are you going to do that before you actually have a good conversation? And furthermore, if I ask, and I think this link in the chat, if you can pull up the core values.
I got it.
if I ask, like, what are some core values that someone holds close to them? So for me, like, I hold curiosity pretty high. I hold fairness pretty high. And then I hold, like, knowledge really high is another one for me. If I hold curiosity and knowledge and fairness so high, why am I not curious about what this person has to say? Why am I not interested in the knowledge that I can gain? And why am I not showing them the appreciation and the interest that I would want them to show me if I brought them news?
Right.
These are list of core values and beliefs. Pretty easy to pull up. There's actually a really cool survey. It's called the Values in Action Character Strengths Survey. If anybody Googles that and is interested, it's a longer one. It's probably going to take up to a half hour, but it'll give you a list of character strengths. All of them are good. And it'll rank them for you and tell you most often what are you using in your daily life. And if those are the pieces that make up you and the person that you want to be, your ideal self. If those are the traits and you're not showing them, talk about striving to be good 5 to 7 days a week and hitting 1 and 2. There it is again. Be the person that you hold yourself to or think of yourself as that is so great, because I think most of us intend to be great. So put a little bit more into doing it, and listening, and particularly when people bring you good news, I think is a great way to start that. Mm-hmm. What are some strengths that stick out to you, Mike?
That's all. I'm going on this list right now. The first one that caught my eye or that resonated with me is where'd it go? Is peace. I very much so value myself, and I value other people who value peace, in the sense of doing things that make their hearts happy and allow them to be fulfilled. And so when they lay their head down on their pillows at night, they are able to say their soul is able to rest. Like they are able to feel like I'm good. I'm in a good space, in a good place. I think peace is a huge one for me. The next one is boldness. Okay. And I've realized this probably, over the past couple months, maybe over the past year or so, at the furthest point, I've realized that I very much so value boldness. I was talking with somebody at what's the name of the store? At Joseph A. Bank. Joseph A. Bank the other day. I was going to exchange a shirt, and the associate and I, we were just kind of going back and forth, just having some normal conversation. And she told me, she's like, yeah, I have 2 jobs, and I'm just here so many days. I was like, oh, okay, cool. What's your other job? And she hesitated as if she wasn't necessarily proud about it. But I could tell she wanted to speak on it. And I gave her the authority, not gave her the authority. I supported her and did my best to say, I told her, I said, claim it. I said, claim it and speak boldly on it. I said, whatever that second job is, whatever it is, you're doing it and it's working for you in this season for a particular reason. I say, claim it, speak to it. It's not for me to shoot down. And I want you to speak to this when other people ask you about it. So claim what that is. And she went on to tell me about it. And I could tell me telling her to claim it, like, I'm going to support you. It just made me so much more comfortable. But to have that boldness to claim what it is that you do, I think that's something that I'm very, very much so learned that I value a lot of. And I would say, just to keep my list short here, based on what we have or what I have in front of me, I'd have to agree with you. Curiosity. I think curiosity is another big one. Just want to understand more. I think people who aim to understand or who value understanding,
Yeah.
in my experience, have some of the most fruitful friendships and relationships, and they tend to show up for their people better. Like, hey, all right, I'm curious as to why this ticks you off, or why you get so excited about this, and the flame in your eye changes when X, Y, and Z is going on. Like, when people want to understand those and get curious about that, I think it just I think there's just a different tone and a different dynamic they bring to that relationship.
Yeah. No, I think those are the three that I definitely see in you. So I'll run down them real quick. Didn't realize how far we are on time, but that's okay.
Nat, we're sorry. We love you.
Just holding it down back there, an angel. If we were talking again on why you wouldn't let yourself off the hook, or why you would choose to help people relive what they have going on with peace, if not for your own peace and not keeping yourself up at night for not doing this or feeling bad about being on your phone or anything like that, bringing peace to others, right? Do I really want to be the reason that Mike's staying up at night because I didn't want to talk to him about his Bengals game? You said when you went to the Cincinnati game, the entire next day, I was thinking about, dude, I had my phone on, I call it mindfulness. I just turn off all notifications but texts and calls.
Yeah.
I realized that night was when it occurred to me that I didn't put FaceTimes on. So your FaceTime just went straight into the wall of like, do not disturb.
Yeah.
I was like, I wish I would have been able to take that call. Like, I had no idea it was there. I beat myself up over it. But bringing peace to others, I don't want to be that.
Right. I hear you.
The boldness. Go back to the 4 cousins that you got telling you the good news. That's a chance for you to be bold in how you're asking these questions, to work on your question asking and to see what you can pull out of them, right? Especially, I think humor and playfulness is another big one.
Facts.
That's probably up there for you if I had to guess. So it's a chance to work on that. The curiosity we touched on with Big, but finding ways to be curious and to dive deeper with whatever that information, whatever that good news is. And one that I think also underlies for you, I think the peace, the boldness, and the curiosity. I think you like listening to people when they are passionate. I know you mentioned passion briefly with peace or something very similar to it. Yeah. Like you like it when people are fired up, when they got that fire in their eyes.
Yeah, I do. I do.
And so that's contagious. And if that's something that you value and that you like to have, which I think most people do, let's fuel that fire, if you will. Not a bad fire. It's a good fire. But oh man. To kind of wrap up here, I know we've been doing a good job at challenging listeners and challenging ourselves to get better at something over the course of the next week. Hopefully it's something that continues to come easier and easier the more you practice this style of responding. For instance, the more natural and automatic it'll become.
For sure.
Which in theory, the more automatic and better the relationships will be around you. 3 that I wrote down as options for myself, and if you have anything else, feel free to throw it in too. But
yeah, I'm a before you do that. Hey Nat, we want you to come back on screen for a minute. We want to involve you in this. I think it'd be a great way to wrap out the episode. I know we asked for your fun fact already, but I'm calling an audible. All right, we're gonna do a different fun fact about Nat. So come back on. You can finish that up while Nat's jumping on here. Yeah, no, go. You talk through your thing first, and these will be the fun facts about Nat. So some of the core values that she has and how this ties into this part right here. So you go ahead and finish up.
I like this a lot. Yeah, so that we're tracking. Me and Mike love fun facts about Nat. Nat not as big on fun facts about me. But 3 things that stuck out to me for this next week that I'm going to I'll pick one of them here, but the three that came to mind were challenging myself to use Mike's tip on nonverbals or on compliments, just a deliberate, intentional compliment that's better than you look good today. Like, great. That was really helpful. Totally. They didn't hear that 3 or 4 times. So trying to make it a little bit more personal and intentional. Like, wow, that shade really is nice. Or I really like the way that they got their shoes laced up. I really like the way that you laced your shoes up. Like something a little bit more unique, a little bit more on it. Or with the nonverbal, like smiling before you go into a conversation. I think that sets the tone really well. That's the first time that I had really thought about it when you had said it. So I liked that a lot. And then obviously with reliving that good news with people, I think that's a big one too, is just trying to, when you notice someone is bringing you good news, just try to stay in that for 30 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever it may be, but help them relive that with fruitful questions and interest.
I think those are good. For me this week, and Nat, you're getting ready to be on the spot. So the core value list is in the chat if you haven't pulled it up already. So have your 3 ready. But I think going into this week, for me, I need to be a little more action based this week. So I think there you can have passive goals, and I guess active, if that be the proper terminology for it, active things to work on, but being more action based this week, and working for me personally to be a bit more bold in the things that I want to pursue. I'm gonna pull this list back up. I want to be a bit more bold this week. I think another one that I need to work on is my knowledge. So my knowledge of, specifically, I'm gonna name it here. I think naming is powerful. Being more bold in gaining clients and people who want to work on their health and wellness, my knowledge on how the body moves, what their goals are. Right now, my first goal is to help 1,000 people reach a health and wellness fitness goal. That could be like 5 pounds this week. It could be just working out for an hour, whatever their goal is. Like, I want to get behind them and help them through that. So those 2 things, so gaining knowledge there. And then being open. I think, and Nick, you've spoken to my ability to listen well. When I speak, I think sometimes I try to deflect and ask questions that give people that opportunity to talk a lot. So when questions are asked to me, just being a bit more open about where I'm at. I could be mentally, physically, emotionally, like spiritually, have that boldness to be open, to express how it is that I'm feeling it and maybe what I'm struggling with, or the areas I'm getting some wins in. I think those are going to be my 3 things I need to tackle this week.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think I'm specifically going to work on, I'll try the compliments. Okay. I think we often are really quick to complain. And a long time ago, I challenged myself with the ratio of 5 compliments to 1 complaint. Ideally with a person. That's what your relationship should have. To reverse the negative nature of the mind, something along those lines. Don't quote me on that, but something we had in one class. I did it, and it was really empowering. Over time, it was a lot easier to think of nice things to say, which, again, really simple concept, but if you don't practice it, you don't really maintain it. So,
Auntie Nat, the spotlight's on you. Give us your three core values, or 3 things that you value. Maybe not core values, 3 things that you value, and what you're gonna work on this week.
So from this list,
specifically
3 things that I value. I'm gonna say definitely authenticity. I value friendships, and definitely value kindness.
Okay.
I mean, this is a good list, but if I had to choose three, yeah, I think those things definitely, those three work hand in hand with each other for sure. You need those definitely in friendships, at least two of those. And then what I'm going to work on this week, I think finish the week, is definitely going to be, I think, like meaningful work. I do feel like I'm really busy, but sometimes I'm like busy for what? So trying to do things, I think that for me, I feel like I'm making an impact or like good productivity, not just
right
for the sake of being busy.
Right.
Because the past couple weeks have been very busy for me. But again, like I want to do something where it's like, yeah, it's meaningful, where it's like others. Yeah.
Yep.
Like, so, yeah.
Oh, good. Those are some fun facts about Nat. All right. That's what that's what she's aiming for this week. I'm also at a little ice on top of the cake. We talked about supporting people and loving people. If y'all didn't know, Nat is a preacher's kid. Her dad, her daddy, her papa, he was a pastor. So little Nat over here is a preacher's kid, and she's been raised in church for a long time, and still she's involved and still is involved with churches in her local church. I'm not gonna give away her location right now. We don't need y'all pulling up on that, stalking that. So, but she is involved with the local church community. So Nat, we appreciate you with the fun facts and dealing with our shenanigans. We know you don't want to be on camera, but we appreciate you pulling up and really making it happen. So this is for episode 10, y'all. Like this one, it's a little emotional. I'm not gonna lie. Like this one feels real good, and I'm really glad we hit it. So Nick, you wanna close us out with anything in particular?
We talked with Don and Regan about
What?
A little bit of keeping yourself accountable.
Yeah.
So as a reminder, we don't need to go around the horn or anything like that, but whatever that goal is, hopefully you came up with one. If not, feel free to steal one of ours. Feel free to pause, rewatch, re-listen. Find something that you think you could work on or come up with your own, but find a way to hold yourself accountable to. For me, it's always sticky notes. So if I put a sticky note on the mirror, if I put something on my whiteboard up at work, something I'm going to run into every day, maybe it's a calendar reminder, maybe it's you change your phone screen background, or you put something on the phone. Takes a couple minutes, maybe even less. Goes a long way, keeps it on the front of the mind. So I would encourage both of you guys to find a way to remind yourself with whatever that is, whatever values you're working on.
I can do that. This is Men to Mind, episode 10, the longest episode yet. If y'all are still rocking with us, we appreciate it more than y'all know. Nat is rolling her eyes and shaking her head. This is a long one, but listen, y'all, we really appreciate it. We really appreciate y'all being here. Hopefully we're reaching really, like it sounds cliche to say, hopefully we're reaching at least one person, and y'all feel like this is making a difference in your life. Continue to be good people, put good into the world. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, interact, comment, all right, and send it to a couple people. We want to reach what's possible and can continue to spread positivity. So we love y'all. We appreciate y'all. This is Men to Mind, episode 10. We signing off.